Well, hello, friends, and I'd like to invite you to a new webinar at Astrology University called Hard Aspects, the Gift and the Struggle with Alejo Lopez. And I have Alejo with us today to tell us about the webinar. Thanks for joining me today, Alejo.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Beautiful. Also, I just want to do a quick plug here at the beginning for the podcast because Alejo's become a regular guest on our podcast. So if you're
Yeah.
if you're new to his work and you want to kind of check him out first, head over to the podcast and look for one of the episodes that he's in. He is co-hosting with Vanessa Montgomery for some of our monthly forecast podcasts. So thanks so much for doing that. You've been really great on the show. It's been great. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a
All right.
pleasure.
Yeah, of course. Beautiful. So hard aspects. So tell folks a little bit about what you're planning to share with them in this webinar.
Okay, so the idea is basically sometimes when you have clients or when people start reading charts, they see the hard aspects and they look like a challenge and a difficulty in life. And usually they do represent some kind of challenge and some kind of struggle. But the promise is, I think, if we work through them, we get a gift. Sometimes I compare them, Joseph Campbell did this the hero's journey, and he says the hero is called to an adventure, and after he goes through tribulations, he gets a reward and he brings the gift back home, and the kingdom is kind of reignited with life. And I think the hard aspect is something like that. We are called to get these two planets together, to join these two planets. Usually, if they are in a hard aspect, the dialogue is quite difficult between them. But if we can find a way to help them get to an agreement, we actually find a gift or ability, a skill, something that we couldn't find before, and we can use it for ourselves. So sometimes I think also about this. There's this new approach to how the nervous system works, and now more and more they're coming with the idea of emergence, right? So the neuron is a very basic cell, and by itself, if we study the neuron by itself, we will never find where consciousness is, right? But something happens in the network of the brain when they're all working together, then an entity that was not there appears, emerges, right? And I think we can approach hard aspects in a similar way. Something happens between these planets when they're acting together with this tension and with this struggle, that a third entity appears that it was not before. It could never happen with the planets working apart by themselves. And also it would not happen maybe if the planets are working in a trine. There's something about the tension of this struggle that creates a third possibility that was not there before. And it's a skill that we can develop. So basically the workshop is about how to find that, how to see that in any hard aspect, how to find this possible third ability that is not present uh, beforehand, that only comes up when the planets work together through that tension. Yeah, this is the idea.
Beautiful. I love the perspective that sounds like it's built into this. And, a lot of us come to astrology, and there's a lot of astrology being practiced and has been for hundreds of years that kind of seeks to avoid challenging experience. And the idea implicit in what you're sharing is that there's some wisdom maybe in not necessarily trying to avoid it. I mean, we have to understand that's a that's an impulse all of us would be to try to avoid difficulty, but rather from this perspective we're thinking about how to think about the difficulty that our chart does represent and that we have experienced, and how to work with that. So thanks for drawing our attention to that. So one other question I have before you go is, what aspects are you going to be talking about? Are you going to be talking more generally about any challenging aspect? Are you going to focus in on some specific planets in aspect and through examples, or can you tell folks a little bit about that?
Yes. So we're going to use different example charts to see how these different aspects work. And we're going to focus on what I call the hard aspects. So for me, the hard aspects are the square, the opposition, the semi-square, and the sesquiquadrate. So we're going to focus especially perhaps on the square and the opposition, but then we're also going to see the semi-square and the sesquiquadrate because they're also tense aspects, right? They're also aspects that planets are a bit like trying to to find an agreement, and they find it hard sometimes. Yes.
Right. Okay, great.
And I, you know,
Beautiful.
I agree with what you said, like kind of trying to avoid the confrontation, the tendency to try to avoid the confrontation. I always think like if you have a planet aspecting another planet, say if Mars is aspecting my Saturn, every time I try to act, to me planets are like characters on a stage. So every time I try to act, every time I try to put Mars forward, he's gonna come on the stage with Saturn. So I think the best thing we can do is, even though it's true, we might sometimes try to not see that, but the best thing we can do is face that and say, okay, how can I work with this? And this is the idea of the workshop. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And folks, if you're interested in this webinar, please head over to astrologyuniversity.com/events. If you're tuning in, if you're joining us rather, before we present the webinar live, you'll find this listed on the event calendar. And if you're tuning into this video after we've already recorded it, the download will be available for instant download. And you can just search for Alejo's name, Alejo Lopez, or you can search for the name of this webinar, Hard Aspects, on any page of the website using the search field at the very top. So if you have any questions about where to find it or any trouble or anything at all, need any help at all, email us at help@astrologyuniversity.com and our customer support team will be happy to help you out. But thanks so much for joining us today, Alejo, and we look forward to seeing you really soon.
Thank you.